But yeah, go ahead.
But look, if you think it through, Liz Truss said she won't impose a windfall tax, right?
Yep.
I mean,
no, hang on. When she was told, when Mr. Truss was told about the doubling in profits of the show, she said she would want to look at it. Now, take from that what you will. She also wants to look at inheritance tax. You could argue she'll be looking at a lot of things.
Well, I mean, the simple thing here is that it's about when you see people out there struggling to eat and heat, and you're talking about the Savoy and some fancy heating system. The short point in my and by the way, I'm not a member of the Labour Party or the Conservative Party, but Keir Starmer is like a Bill Sykes anyway. He is hardly the friend of the people either. So I mean, you really can take the Victorian take on this, because we're heading towards poverty not seen in this country since probably the Victorian era in some cases. This is absolutely abysmal.
Ali, I will leave it there because I have the Defence Secretary as ever. Great speaking with best wishes to your family, and well done working that. I think you probably worked the Oliver metaphor or similarly to the absolute end, so thank you for that. Now, one of the issues we discussed at the debate last night is who might enjoy the support of Conservative heavy hitter. He brings quite an audience with him. Defence Secretary Ben Wallace will now, overnight, we have learned, because Mr. Wallace has come out to support Liz Truss. He joins me now, and before we get into that, Secretary of State, thank you for coming on the show. Let's talk a little bit about something I know you're keen to get across, and we must give that a due credit. Service families with children aged 4 to 11 will benefit from what's called a wraparound childcare. We'll talk about Liz Truss in a moment. First, Secretary of State, what is wraparound childcare for service families? Good morning.
Good morning, Nick, and thank you for asking about it. I'm on the media round, and we're launching today.
I bet nobody else has.
No, they haven't.
No, I knew they wouldn't.
Look, so
I'm always here for you, Secretary of State. You know I'm standing by, poised, armed and ready.
Thank you, Nick. Our men and women in the armed forces don't work normal hours. They work incredibly hard. Often some of them are deployed overseas for many months at a time, leaving the other partner at home to look after the children. At the last election, we felt it was very important that we recognise that, and so we have committed to free wraparound childcare. That is, after school club and breakfast club, up to the age of they go to secondary school for children. That can be up to £3,000 a year per child.
That's the saving these men and women will enjoy, is it, Secretary of State?
Yes, that is.
Okay.
And that's, we've piloted in some of the bases so far, and it completely rolled out for September. And it just totally reflects the working. We're trying to get more women into defence. We're trying to get, a better work-life balance so people can be retained. And I think, I know as a father of 3 children that just that beginning and the end of the day makes life very hard for the other partner to go out and work. But also, especially in defence, imagine if your husband's off for 6 months, serving in Iraq or somewhere like that. That will be a pinch point. And I was determined to do that. And I remember reflecting that, 30 odd years ago, I was in the army. The idea I was going to be sitting there as Secretary of State talking about childcare shows the changes to the world we live in. And I'm delighted that we're going to deliver this manifesto commitment. It's going to be done from September. And all the feedback I've had is it means a lot.
Lastly on this, you piloted it, I understand, in 6 sites, Woolwich Barracks up at Catterick. Do we know now how many children might this help, Secretary of State?
I can't quite give you the figure off the top of my head.
Okay.
It's many thousand we'll do. It's 1.4 billion over 10 years is the budget so far on it. I
think I've been handed a figure. They're looking at more than 20,000 service children as a figure.
So
does that sound about right?
Yes, it does. I thought it was about 18,000, but I wasn't going to guess.
Okay, so it's around 20,000. Okay. Yeah. Mr. Wallace, you know what's coming next. A very powerful piece in the Sun newspaper today, and I will point my listeners also, you have a comment piece in today's Times, but to the Sun, the political editor Harry Cole, the photograph of you together, you've come out with Liz Truss. Ben Wallace, why?
Well, look, first of all, Liz has the experience. She was not just the Foreign Secretary, she's been the Trade Minister, Trade Secretary, negotiating trade deals. But before that, she was 2 years Chief Secretary of the Treasury, nearly. She spent a long time in the Treasury. That's the nation's bookkeeper is the Chief Secretary of the Treasury. Whenever I try and get more money out of the Treasury, it's the Chief Secretary they send round with a hatchet. And so she understands both finances, economics, international trade. and defence and security. Secondly, I've spent the last 2 years with her and Rishi in cabinet, but with her I've been in bilateral meetings around the world, in Australia, in France, and then in the UN, and well, not the UN, but NATO for me, and other multinational forums. And so I've seen her close up, and I think she's authentic. What you see is what you get. She's quite feisty. I've seen her take on other nations and stand up for Britain. And then on defence spending and support for defence, she absolutely understands the impact it has both at home, if we don't support our defence, both on our economy, but also abroad on our security. And, totally unprompted by me, not that long ago, she wrote to the Prime Minister saying that she thinks that defence needs some more funding. That was nothing to do with me. It was welcome, obviously, but she's been consistent, and I felt that, on balance, having watched them in action in your debates and others, that she was the one who's going to get my support.
You tell Harry Cole in The Sun, I don't have the luxury as Defence Secretary of just walking out the door. I have roles in keeping this country safe. And when asked if perhaps there'd been a dereliction of duty, you responded, quotes, we each had our own considerations. I have a duty until I'm replaced. Had Mr Sunak been serving under one of the officers in whatever part of the armed services that you might represent, what would have happened to him?
Well, just like Harry Cole in his questions, you're very good. Look, the reality is...
we're probably trained at the same school. I don't want to worry you too much, but we've come through the same brutal marine camp that is the Sun, Mr Wallace.
Well, I think the key here is... there are other mechanisms if you want to remove your leader of your party. I remember, I think, tweeting at the time that, if you don't like the Prime Minister, there's the 1922 process. I would be surprised if any of your listeners even remembers the ins and outs of the 1922, even those few weeks ago. But fundamentally, there was going to be a ballot or something that you could change the rules and have another confidence vote. So I felt that there was a way for people to do that. I didn't want the Prime Minister to go. That was my personal view. I didn't want Boris Johnson to leave. But nevertheless, if those people did, they could have taken that mechanism. I didn't think walking out of a cabinet is the right thing to do, especially if you're a minister whose role is, in my world and, for example, the Home Secretary's world, where we have operational obligations, signing warrants. For me, I have to authorise operations around the world. And take responsibility for those people at danger or in danger that I've probably sent to do a job. I don't think I can just walk out on that. I can do those other mechanisms if that's what I wanted, but I could also, you just get replaced eventually. So, and I just made that comment that also, keeping the markets calm is probably quite another important thing if you're worried about cost of living crisis. So that was my comment.
Lastly, how obstructive was the former Chancellor in granting more cash to the armed forces?
I don't think it was obstructive. I think he had a job to do.
I read Boris Johnson once had to overrule him, Secretary of State.
Yeah, I mean, the multi-year settlement that we got was not what the Treasury had wanted. They wanted a one-year settlement. This was back in 2019, I think. And it was vital that we got a multi-year settlement. And the Prime Minister effectively asserted his authority and made sure that's what happened.
But Mr Sunak was not in support?
Not that I remember.
Ben Wallace, thank you. Defence Secretary appearing here on LBC, where at 8 o'clock the news is next.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.